Good morning and welcome once again to Managing Change through Effective Communications. I am your host, Ronald Allen, and every day we look to find a little bit more of what we can do to manage our life's changes. And we do that through effective communications. And it is a journey, it is a process. It's also an awareness. It's also recognizing that we have to have some humility in ourselves and for our environment. And that can be embarrassing at times. So we've completed our very first week of our new podcast communications program show. And I'll tell you, discipline and focus pays off because not only do I have my cup of tea, and this today is actually PG Tips lemon, real lemon from a real lemon, a sliver, quite a few slivers of raw ginger root, along with, you know what they say, all work and no play makes Jack a dull individual. This is a blueberry muffin donut, blueberry donut. So it's obviously, and you can see, coated with sugar. So at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, after 5 days of putting together our podcast, I have decided to break ranks, go to the pleasure side. Oh my goodness. You see, part of discipline, part of being on point, part of being focused, part of having the right attitude is knowing when to just give yourself a little bitty reward. And that's what this is. Now, you know you haven't seen what I've been eating all week, and I certainly haven't seen what you have. At the same time, to be honest to thyself, what is that, Hamlet? My mother always recited that to uh, what is the phrase? To thy own self be true. And I thought, well, it's a Saturday. I'm still going to do the program. I'm still going to, I believe, bring some value to the table. Let's bring some sweetness. Is it Barry White? Your sweetness is my weakness. Oh, so we're gonna dig into that after the program. Notice again, discipline. I haven't eaten it. Look, I have not touched it. Look. No, that's not a bite. That is just the tissue being soaked up by the sugar. I may not even eat that, quite frankly, because my body is accustomed to my juicing, fruits, vegetables, my fish, my wok cooked chicken, and the importance of that. You know, we've got a whole series of programs dealing with food, and it speaks to the Asvadi approach to life. You know, the elements, four primary elements, and how our body breaks down food, living food at least, and then energizes, refreshes, replenishes our ability to be on point, performance driven. Again, you know, the other day I had a slight discussion about this word motivation. And to me, it's a half truth. It's like saying there's only so much resources in the world. Well, if you're squandering them, absolutely. If you're utilizing them the inappropriate way, absolutely. If you're not optimizing the replenishing structure of the earth, just like the replenishing capabilities of the human body, then it's not going to be sustainable. We always talk about sustainability in business, yet we don't immediately not only connect it to the human uh, capabilities, we don't reverse the order because without the human input component, right? You've heard HR say employees are the most important people, yet we're going to marginalize them with at-will contracts. We're going to marginalize them with only so many days when there are serious issues in their life. We're going to marginalize them when they have to submit their benefit packages. We're going to marginalize them with the extent of their health insurance packages. Some of them are totally useless. And of course, the ultimate marginalization is we're going to pay you below the living wage. Saturday is going to be a fun program. Saturday has got to be sarcasm. Saturday has to be Black humor. We're going to have not only Black History Month, February, we're going to have Black humor every Saturday. How about that? Get that excited, huh? All right, let me get my lemon and tea with ginger. Before you send a message scolding me whether I'm using raw brown sugar or bleached white sugar. I use honey in your face. I use honey. And I know there's another conversation about that, as whether there's any honey left in the world. Of course there is, if you believe it. So today's program, what is today's program? Right? Reflection of the week. Being willing to look over what you have managed to manage well. Now that perspective is important because I know for myself, I'm hard on myself, and unfortunately I can be hard on my wife in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And I can go round and round and round in circles. Fortunately, she is the type of person who can, as they say in tennis, return the ball, right? So, reflection of the week. What have you done well? How are you asking yourself those questions, right? What is the parry? You've had a challenge, you've had confrontations, you've had disruptions, you've had doubting thoughts. Now, what is in your toolbox? That's an archaic term. What's in your mental fortitude resources that you can pull out? Let's start with a few questions. What are your needs, both in private talk and public engagement? And I'm using these terms on purpose. I want you to recognize and hopefully feel that there's a big difference when I say, good morning, how are you? And what are your best hopes for the day? When I say, how's it hanging? How's it hanging? Thank you. I'm doing well, thank you very much. I've got thick skin. Love using the expression buffalo hide, crocodile skin, right? Or is it, yeah, it's buffalo hide. Buffaloes have hide, crocodiles have skin. We can ask questions like, and I have a few framed out. How have you dealt with your challenge while it has been present? These are all taken from my mentor. He doesn't know he's my mentor, but he does because I've joined much of his groups and I've been involved in much of his conversations. And I have even reached out to him in a number of ways. Elliot Connie. He's a psychiatrist. He works in the world of solution-focused brief therapy, which to me is conversations. It's communicating at the very granular root of engagement, where instead of leading a person, we ask questions that evoke the need to think of where we want to go, where we'd like to go, and how do we get there? And recalling past accomplishments, recalling past feelings of, whew, that was a nice experience. I think we've lost that. I believe we've lost the importance of recognizing I had a good experience. I want to duplicate it. How do I duplicate it? How can I ask not leading questions or directional questions, but moreover, how can I ask questions that allow me to carve out the right path? Excuse me 1 minute, because I know this phone is going to go off again and it's going to piss me off. Remember what I said the other day, right? I said you have to sometimes take your audience to the safe island. Sometimes you have to prep your audience, prep the people that you're working with for potential problems, potential glitches, interruptions. And that is, by the way, a sign of intelligence as to the environment you work in. There are limitations. I don't care how successful you have been. There are limitations in your next initiative, next project, next iteration that will challenge you. It's not about accepting them. It's about recognizing them and then finding ways to perhaps take one or even a quarter step back in order to springboard forward. And that is a mental thought process that allows us to absorb, if you will, and like the willow tree, allow those frustrations, allow those challenges, those winds to blow through our branches, through our leaves. Notice the willow tree, the leaves are conical, if I can use that description, whereas the oak is a broadleaf, right? The willow, think of imagine if you can, as the new expression is, Google it, right? Don't go to an encyclopedia, Google it, and you'll see the difference. And then you'll understand communications. You'll understand that when I say become the willow, allow those frustrations, those inabilities that we all are faced with, allow them to pass through you. The other day, one of our members on Toastmasters shared with us a very painful experience. And he was told, I'm not sure why this thing is still barking at me, but you know what we're going to do? We are going to shut you down. We're going to erase you. Okay. And if that doesn't do it, it's going out the bloody window. Once again, managing change through effective communications. Bring it. So he shared, member of Toastmasters, Maguire Achievers, shout out. I told you, Saturday has to be a little more fun. It's going to be, not has to be, it's going to be more fun. And we don't need a whole bunch of bells and whistles. I do have a clapper. I have a clapper somewhere here, and I should use it, but I don't see it. All right, never mind. Moving rapidly along. Now my phone's acting. See this? Technology always has the last laugh. Back to Toastmasters. The individual that was sharing with us a very personal story. He was told by a counsel person, allow that emotion to pass through. Do not resist it. That's an incredibly powerful piece of advice. So many of us fight that emotion. No, it can't be happening. Why is it happening to me? Oh my goodness, etc., etc., etc. And none of those expressions of frustration help. Conversely, and it has been seen, recognized through research, that should we allow those emotions that the body and the mind need to express. Your body and mind need to express it. It is a disruption. It is an emotional dislike. It is a trauma. It is the body's means of expressing anger. If we don't allow that, then, and again, research evidences and shows, we literally cause cancerous cells to begin to manifest. that is where we lose our ability to manage and, dare I say the word, control our destiny, our future, our day, our moment. You can literally, have you ever, here's a question, have you ever felt discouraged, felt despondent, felt this is not going to work? What? Oh, I have no options. And then for some reason, you turn on the spigot of possibilities, the spigot of hope, and you decide, wait a minute, I'm going to let this emotion pass. I'm going to give it its space. And while I do that, my brain, which is why the brain is so incredibly powerful, begins to work on solutions. And it seems that within a moment, a solution is presented, you accept it, and that resistance dissipates, is removed, no longer exists. Can you feel it? Can you give yourself the time to allow that to be true? Powerful stuff, dudes. Powerful stuff. Being willing to look over what you have managed to manage well. Give yourself a little credit. Blueberry donut laced with sugar that will light you up. Will light you up. Unbelievable. I have no idea why I even thought of eating that thing. It's just a total turn off. But I probably will when I go outside and cut some wood later, if the weather permits. Do you believe the weather this week? We had snow in the northern part of Pennsylvania, northeastern part of Pennsylvania, a place called Poconos, the Poconos. And even though we're a better part of 3.5 hours south, we got a good dose of chilly weather. We were out yesterday, Saturday. We were doing our thing. We go drive out to Monmouth Mall, which is dying. You ever seen a place that was vibrant, was alive with people? Not only the consumer people, moreover, the younger members of our society, dare I say generation, and get caught up on my own words. The younger members of our society who don't have money, you can clearly see they have no money. Although they do dress to the nines and they are just busy communicating and talking and sharing and checking each other out. And it's a good social environment to be in, where all people of different ages come to this particular mall. I know I don't like malls per se. We've been going to this mall for many, many, many years. And the atmosphere is congenial. The atmosphere is alive. It's electric. It's people looking at each other, literally looking at each other. You know how in Europe, people will look at you. People around the world in other countries, they will look at you, and it's not a stare down. It's not a antagonistic view or look or sighting. It's, hey, I acknowledge you. Hey, I like the way you're dressed. Hey, you're different. Oh, I haven't seen those features before. Oh, I have seen those features before, and I recognize that. These are subtleties. These are not flippant moments that should be passed over. These are true social engagement expressions of recognition. Let's continue with the recognition with some deep dive into some really cool questions, again, taken from 101 solution focused question, which is part of solution focused brief therapy, which is used for engaging clients. I'm going to even take that, extrapolate that into engaging people. You may recall on some of my past, it's interesting, my future past podcasts, quantum physics sneaking in there. You may recall that I shared with you that solution focused brief therapy is as much as connecting with the client, with the customer, to find their best future self through a series of questions that develop based on the response of the client. It's as much about that as it is about the practitioner maturing in their ability to fact find. It's about the practitioner being mature in their own mental and physical capability. Come out of the academic and go into human fundamental engagement, interactive communications. That's really what it's all about. And so many of us are so removed from that. Well, just send it to me. Just text it to me. Don't worry about that. I don't want to know the name. Give me, bastardize the person's name. The other day, we had a conversation again on our Toastmasters show, though, and I had expressed my need to pronounce my members' full names and not just call them by their first name or an abbreviated or bastardized name. That is a show of respect. That is a show of cultural development. That is a show of willingness to recognize the person in their terms, what their mother and father, the name their mother and father gave them. How about that for a directional response? It's a directional response. Well, we'll just call you Joe. We'll just call you Tani. We'll just call you Jay. And the name is very different. So there's a disconnect. There is a disconnect from their social origins to where they are and moving forward. That's what I see. That's what I do not like. So as much as I may still stumble, fumble, and fall, I still seek to address people in the appropriate way. Let's see, we've got a comment here. Hold on. People, he has a clapper and he's not afraid to use it. Rain, thank you. Right, I've got a clapper. No, not those clappers. Not with the lights. It's the clapper that you use at the sports arena. Oh my goodness! All right, cool. I like it though. Like it. Let's put a like here. Again, this is new stuff for me. I'm entering chats. I'm looking at these different modules that they have along, and we're using, by the way, StreamYard. It's a podcast platform, a medium to reach out and utilize, and it's pretty cool. Developing as we go. Very nice. Thank you, Ryan. Right, RYYY. What's the number? 87. Pretty cool. So, where were we? Effective communications, allowing, instead of looking at the engagement as what you're trying to tell people and what you want, how you want them to respond, you're developing your ability to connect with other people. And in order to do that, you have to ask more effective questions. Here's a few of them. I wrote down this one. What has made you address? Here's another one. I don't know if I've said this one already today, but let's repeat it. No harm, no foul. What has made you address this challenge instead of giving up on it? Now, you could also say, instead of giving up on, and then you finish the sentence, right? You finish the sentence. What has made you address this challenge? Now, you might say, well, everybody wants to address their challenges. Okay, maybe the first go round, the second innings, for those of you who play cricket, and not baseball. But that fourth and fifth challenge, where you haven't achieved the desired level of engagement, the desired results, that optimization that you believed or perhaps were even sold on, right? Do you still forge ahead? Do you still have stick-to-itiveness? Is it still stimulating you? Does that need to get things done, does that still stimulate you? And if it doesn't, what happened? Did you recognize a part of your personality that only goes first, second, maybe third innings and not the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth iteration that is required? And I call on the movie industry, where many movies, trilogies, storylines take 10, 15, and even 20 years to manifest. Go back and look at some of the greatest pieces of production work, cinematography, right? I'm a member of Stage 32, and it's basically performing arts, production, editing, directors, writers, creators of art platform. It's a community. It's very powerful. It's global. And some of these artists, producers, writers are putting forth their very best efforts. And because of funding, because of timing, because of social acceptance, because of social rejection, all forms of communication, they're all forms of whether a society is willing to communicate. Just as when we talk about some, and I don't know if we should even say hard issues and soft issues, because if you're the one trying to get it accomplished, if you're the one presenting it to the board, to the stakeholders, to those that will allow it to grow and be visible, it's still a hard issue. It's still a significant issue to you. At the same time, there's a great documentary. I think I mentioned it in the past. I've got to pull that out. I gotta have better notes. Gotta have better notes. Women in the movie industry, both as actresses, which, by the way, they prefer to be addressed as actors. Actors is not male, female. It's I'm an actor. Even as directors, producers, and writers have been held back. Now, I submit to you, why does the vessel of life go through that experience? Let me repeat it. I don't know if people got that. They are the vessel of life, unless a man has a uterus. The Life of Brian, Monty Python gang, come on, 20 plus years ago, 30 years ago, probably by now. That is a disconnect in communications, a truly fundamental disconnect in communications. They are the vessel of life. Yet, when they exhibit themselves beyond those fundamental, essential survival uh, uh, functions, they find significant hurdles. People who will go out of their way, women who've gone into marathons, have been beaten. What's that all about? What is that all about? Uh, Women who've gone into the sciences, we call them STEM today, right? STEM, have been held back. Resources have been pulled away. That's a whole other discussion. And I have the perfect guest. I didn't realize I was going to line this lady up. She is incredible. And she comes with the right attitude. She comes with the parrying of your perhaps asinine question. When I spoke with her about 2 weeks ago, I loved it. She reminds me of my wife. She reminds me of my mother. She reminds me of the women that I know in my life that just break through. They find another path. They are both steel and water. They are both wind and fire. And I get excited about that because that's a resource. That's intellectual capital that you just can't stop. Oh, you hold it back. Yes, you'll throw up these red herrings from time to time. It is amazing how the stick-to-itiveness of their attitude allows so many others. Ruth Baynard Ginsburg, come on, you gotta be kidding me. Talk about communications. It's not to look at them as on a pedestal. It is to expand that way of thinking so that our emotions begin to pick up and we mature as a creature. And so our communications with ourselves become more earnest. Our communications with ourselves then is more comfortable. We become more comfortable in our skin instead of always, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know if you can, and I don't know if they will accept me and you, and I think we could do, but we're limited by this is not the right time. It's never the right time for humans. I'm getting off on a tangent. I told you it was a sad ending. My ginger. Give me my ginger. Hold on. Hold on. Oh my goodness. You know, in these exercise info commercials, when the person takes a drink and everybody else takes a drink, or you're on one of those bicycles, everybody takes a drink, right? Okay, we'll take a drink. And some other discovery questions, other engaging questions. What would you notice as clues that you were progressing? Any challenge you have, any challenge whatsoever, what would you notice? Let me get it back in. What would you notice as clues that you were progressing, moving forward, seeking desired outcomes, recognizing what you haven't done, or perhaps what you missed, or what you perhaps didn't forge aggressively to make the outcome desirable. It's diagnosis, it's retooling, right? Many people today, sadly, will come out of their beds, go into their garages or their barns, and they'll work on machines. How about working on this machine? How about getting it together? I was going to say an expression there, but I don't think the explicative is necessary. These types of questions I love. How would you recognize that someone you appreciate sees your progression? How would you recognize that someone you appreciate would see your progression? Boom. It's like a wave, right? You got the one droplet. You know how they say, well, you're just a drop of water in a big bucket or an ocean or a lake, what have you. And if you can pull more of that support, you can recognize that support. You find venues, you find clubs, you find associations that are all moving aggressively, and they're accountable for one another. They have to be accountable. The other day, going through some social media positioning and postings, and you know these videos pop up, right? And this one about a cheetah, and these cheetahs are having to go down to basically a pond and drink. Well, we all know that when nature's best tries to feed, something else is looking to feed on them. And you could clearly see that the female, the mother, was warning them, don't be too quick, take your time, suss the situation out. And unfortunately, one of the younger cubs didn't have the discipline, didn't have the fortitude of listening to mother. And this incredibly huge crocodile just grabbed it by the neck, and you could see it, that's it. You're not going to see the end of the day. Sometimes in our communication, we're going to experience an unpleasant experience. We're going to experience an unpleasant engagement. And that's where our fortitude, our attitude, our focus, our self-discipline, emotional quotient, servant leadership mentality must kick in. There are going to be times where there is that disruption that we cannot do anything about. And the only solution is similar to what I said earlier. Let that pain, let that experience, the emotion move through you. Because the more you resist, in many cases, the worse the experience becomes. And for some reason, I am I am attracted to nature's best. We have all kinds of animals, and we're not in a farm, we're not in a rural setting. We're in rural in terms of we've got woods, and there's only about 13 houses in our so-called development, but this development's been around since the 70s. This house is, I think, 74, 75. We stripped it out 18 plus years ago. Um, and perhaps this is a metaphor for how our own communications needs to evolve, right? When you come to the table with an organization, when you join an organization, you see their policies and procedures, you accept their protocols, you recognize the leadership structure, and then you craft out your own. I'm a big believer in other. You have A, B, C, D, then you have other. Now, when I say A, B, C, D, not necessarily in that order. In some cases, as we've said earlier, and in other podcasts, yes, you need a sequence upon which to follow so that risk is minimized, the right order, right? You don't throw the keys up at the car and expect it to start up, right? You have to unlock the door. You have to get in the driver's side, right? You put the key in to the ignition. I happen to have a habit of waiting just 5 or 10 seconds. Just turn it on gently. I like to do that. I know many people jump in the car, turn it on, and back out. Okay. It is recognizing that you don't always have to be on fight nor fire. How about a couple of other questions? What did you first notice that things were improving? When did you notice? When did you first notice that things were improving? Some of the work that I have with youth and with adults who are going through unwelcome change will say to me, I don't know, to that question. When did you first recognize that things were improving? So I then begin a series of questions based on their response. Have you ever? Just throw it back. Have you ever? And someone said, have I ever what? I said, have you ever, the previous question? Because you see, sometimes they're so capable of intimidating and leading the person's question. I'll give you a classic. The other day, about 4 years ago, I have a habit of using that phrase, the other day. And it can be many years in the past. That's the beauty of as you get older, you can do that. You can psych people out. And this individual I was working with, I think it was mortgage banking at the time. I said, well, you got to show up and you got to be in a suit. And you have to present yourself as that loan officer. I was teaching this individual and showing them the ropes. And they just kept saying, well, why do I have to do that? I said, well, this is the environment we're in. And for some reason, they had the image that they could come in khakis and t-shirt type and present themselves where people are buying $500,000, $3 million homes. We did some small business loans for commercial acquisitions and even inventory. And sometimes you'd have to meet various stakeholders. And I expressed that to the individual, and they just kept pushing back. I said, well, let's do this. Why don't you go and do some more homework and research on those that are successful in this business and how they present themselves and those that are not? And I would like you to bring back some summary of that. He never came back. The individual never came back. And it was because they're not willing to do the homework. They're not willing to look at resources that are possibly at hand. You know the expression, 2 steps forward, 1 step back? Many people don't want to go through that experience. And that's a communication issue. That's a realization that if I'm not getting the feeling that I desire, then I remove myself. Well, here's a question to that. What are you removing yourself to? Just as when people say to me, they give up, I say, okay, what are you giving yourself up to? Because unless you're going to commit suicide, take yourself completely emotionally, physically out of life, where are you? You're right back where you didn't want to be, in a painful situation. We can guide that person. We can help that person identify their benefits based on some reflection and extrapolation into the future. We can help them. We can guide them. We have all the tools. Strategic intervention, solution-focused brief therapy, you name it, we got it. We can refer them out. We can refer them in. They have to be shown their worth. They have to be able to recall a time, a moment in time that they enjoyed some aspect of their existence. And it can be in external things, cars, animals, um, real estate, travel, feelings, places, smells, food. That's where we totally explode the possibilities. Have you ever been somewhere and you smelled some food and you're like, wow, I remember she was cool, right? Or a sound. The other day, I was on a virtual conference call with leaders in social media, search engine optimization, and all this techie stuff. And they played Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I was like, oh my goodness. And immediately it brought me back to and reminded me of Ohio Players. Oh my God. That was music. They are theater performers. So we don't, that's why I say the practitioner of their practice, of their art, their form, is limited by how they see the world, how they have been programmed, and either have not, never considered, rejected the ability to bring in seemingly diverse pieces of information. You can help people. Another one, I had a young lady, very removed, and in the conversation with the group of people we were with, she expressed an interest in sports, specifically games, specifically video games. And I pulled out my notes, and you'll see a post on my blog, Ronald's blog, where we talk about youth from Africa, South Africa, killing it in virtual gaming, killing it. And guess what? Not only when I say youth, identifying with males, there's a female gamer, and she is killing it. I have no idea who she is. Didn't know her from Adam. Didn't know she existed. She didn't know I existed. Wonderful. Doing a little homework, looking for what the other person is expressing. You go on that journey, I'm telling you, you add. I think people are afraid that they will be lost. I think people are afraid that what is important to them will be minimized. I haven't had that experience. What I have had is that I take what my interest might be for that moment in time, park it on the side. Park it on the side. You're going down the highway from here to Vancouver, from here to Florida, from here to the Netherlands, Newfoundland, not the Netherlands, Newfoundland. You stay on the road. I'm talking about the road. You have to pull off to the side every now and again. And you take on that new information. And by recontextualizing it and saying, well, where does that fit for me? How can I connect with that person? How can I use this information, right, for their benefit? That's how I connect with people. My wife's passion for animals. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter what the animal is, other than flies and mealybugs, those silver bugs. We had rented a house one time, and we had to change the sinks in the basement. The landlord wouldn't do it. We were renting at the time. And so we needed double sinks. We actually need three because you have two for the dogs, one for the cats. I know, we're extravagant in that department. I told you, when you join with someone and go down their road of interest, you learn so much if you allow yourself to, instead of being parochial with your view, with having to be right and with having to be in control. And these little silky worms, we had to spray the place down, scrape it down, re-mortar, that's the expression, and then seal it. Because my wife has a passion for animals. And we've had Vietnamese potbelly pigs, we've had Savannah monitor lizards, we've had Asian golden crested pheasants, which is like a peacock, smaller, not as domesticated. My father at the time was alive, and he was looking at us like, "Oh, we're gonna eat that? We're gonna eat that?" I'm like, "No, this is gonna be stabbed to death by my to-be wife." We've had dogs, cats, all kinds of cats. I mean, cats I've never even heard of. Now we're into rabbits. You know what a lop's-eared rabbit is? Do you know what? There's another kind of rabbit. It's a big rabbit. I mean, like a good-sized dog. 40 pounds, I'm talking, not these little cutie things. My point of sharing this with you, specifically on this Saturday, which I think I'm going to make the Saturdays forum more like this, is that you learn someone else's interests and by being willing to discuss it and engage in it for a period of time, you develop an interest of yourself. You learn that you are capable of engaging with others. You learn that you're incapable of letting go of what you think life or the conversation or the situation has to be. In project management, we talk about optimization. We also talk about supporting the stakeholder interests and being willing to being willing to adjust if the desired outcomes are not achieved or the level of outcome is not achieved, right? So we can achieve progress. Is that progress at the level that we need? Just like a business, there's a minimum number of widgets we need to produce, product, service, benefit. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. We're not bringing enough revenue. We're not bringing enough income to support our operations. And then there is, as we've seen in the late 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, there's a level above which it's not sustainable. There's some cooking of the books. There is some fiduciary questions being presented. So again, I talk about your personal life, your personal structure, and then your business acumen, your business philosophy. To me, they are one because it's you. You're the common denominator. You're the baseline. We frame that with our newsletter, for example, has you, the individual. How are you designed? What are your beliefs? What are your intentions when you go into a conversation? How do you engage with people at different levels? Your husband, wife, your children, your nephews, your nieces. Some of you may know I've tried to reach out to a few of my nephews and nieces on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And unfortunately, I missed an opportunity with one. That has been painful because when I first came to this country, there was another cousin who I did spend a significant amount of time with every summer when I came over here. And I lost him as well. And then over the years, I found other nephews and nieces who did not have people who could communicate with them. And I lost them. And at this stage in my life, that's very painful. So if you were ever to meet me or you post a question, why are you doing this? It's because I miss those opportunities. I miss the camaraderie. I miss Kwame. He was an intellectual. He was the individual who literally went into the Staten Island Library and read profusely and could communicate. And we did communicate. And yet I was so full of other stuff that I missed the opportunity. There have been cousins and relatives that I have not known at all and were in close proximity, and I missed those opportunities. They're no longer here. You only get to do this once. It's as real as it gets. Samuel Jackson has an expression that he's used in many of his movies, and that's really where it's at. And the latest cousin is so incredibly painful because I love his mother. I don't know the husband very well. He does have a brother, and I'm not sure what it takes. I'm not sure what it takes to break through. So my calling, my selfish need is to connect. And as I say to my wife, I have a double-headed axe, because people think, oh, you're warm and fuzzy, kumbaya, Mary Poppins, Peter Pan, Peter Poppins, Mary Pan. No, absolutely not. I'll take your head off in a heartbeat, because this is the only life we're going to have. These are the communication devices that are available to us. And if we don't take the effort, we don't make the effort to learn how to use them, to develop them, to make mistakes, to fall on our face and say, okay, you can get back up. I want to get back up. I will get back up. It's more than just having to go to a job and saying, I fulfill these requirements, these job descriptions. That is so incredibly limiting. And with today, the ability to reach out and connect with people with resources. I'm going to do a series on HR. I think people are under some fallacy, as they are with their legislative leaders, that these institutions are here for our benefit. They never have been, never will be. Only if you fall in line with what their mantra, their interests are. And even then, only for a period of time. We've seen it time and time again. It's not going to change unless you craft your own path. The benefit today, of course, is that you can galvanize people who not just feel the same way. You got to be careful with that group think construct. Moreover, people that are searching. And you can do it two ways. You can be comfortable in your space. You can communicate that to yourself. You're comfortable in your space. And while you're comfortable, you know that the dynamics of life are constantly ebb and flow. The foraging for food and being the food, right? We've learned that the polar caps are shifting. They may not shift in our lifetime. It takes millions and millions of years. The understanding and acceptance of that allows you then to think more broadly of what's possible. We know that the tectonic plates of the earth shift because of not polar, but the forces, the magnetic forces of the sun, the moon, and the other planets that impact us. By learning about that, by communicating, by being willing to take some time, even if you know nothing about it, you will find information that will arrest your need to react and rather respond to situations that you go through. People have done research on the ebb and flow of the ocean caused by the magnetic field force of the moon. So there are days that some of us are totally out of whack, right? We talk about the blue moon, we talk about a full moon. Can you recognize in yourself that these forces are at play? Just as we're using solution-focused brief therapy questions. And these questions are so poignant. They're so timely because we don't use them on a regular basis, so that we miss the juice that they bring, the refreshing perspective. What would you like to experience instead of the problem? Some of you know I work with developmentally and behaviorally challenged youth, and you hear the clinicians ask the same old mundane, run down, pathetic questions. How's your day? How are your meds? Where's that stimulating anybody? It ain't. Doesn't stimulate me. Why am I there? So someone will say, well, why are you in this environment? To learn. Because until you practice the form, until you practice the katas, until you exercise your voice, you won't know what will come out in an instant. You won't realize how you are triggered by emotional states that are in the past, yet can be arrested to go into the future. That's what our existence allows us to do. It allows us to grow. It allows us to change up if we want to. It allows us to recognize, I don't like that experience. I don't need this relationship. I prefer to have, and then craft a path through effective communications with ourselves that then becomes more meaningful with other people, more purposeful, and most important, removes the stinking thinking of those that you do not wish to be around. That's freedom. That is freedom. It takes discipline, it takes attitude, it takes commitment, it takes every day coming back to the podium, coming back to that microphone, coming back to that mental state that perhaps you think you can't control, you can't manage, you can't change, and slowly turn that wheel, that little coffee grinding wheel. And over a period of time, you'll see that you forge a conversation that's endearing, that's refreshing, that's supportive, that's uplifting, that is energetic. And then you're going to say to yourself, where did this come from? How did I get to this stage? And we do our reflection. Being willing to being willing to look over what you have managed to manage well. That is the message. And you can only do that by exposing yourself to yourself and being honest to thy own self be true. It's a poignant position and a place to springboard forward. Thank you for being a part of our program. I trust that you would engage as we go forward. You can find me on ronaldmallen.com. We love the comments. We love the engagement. Everybody's comment is worthy because it challenges those that think they're ahead, and it brings along those that think they are behind. Have a great weekend. I will not be on Sundays. I will take one day in the week to myself and my family. And other than that, enjoy.